We are the foundation, bulletproof the hating from the plantation. We built the whole nation. We are the foundation, bulletproof the hating from the plantation. We built the whole nation. We are the foundation, bulletproof the hating from the plantation. We built the whole nation. We are the foundation, bulletproof the hating from the plantation. We built the whole nation.
Foundational family, we are at war with tethers, confirmed supremacists, and coons. Some guy named Lucre, who I never heard of, popped up on my Twitter timeline with the segment he did on the Alex Jones show, where he's cooning and buffooning, trying to project the transatlantic slave trade or slavery in America on black Americans as an excuse for America not owing us reparations. This video is fair use for educational purposes and commentary only. Roll that coon footage.
It makes sense. You know, the first slave owner, and the word slave itself, it derives from Slavic. That's not black people. Slavic people aren't black. The word slave came from Slavic. And in America, a lot of black owners had slaves. The first slave owner was a black man, Anthony B.A. Johnson. Anthony Johnson, he was the first black slave owner in America, and the first slave owner because he had 3 indentured servants. 2 of them were white and 1 of them was black, and he argued with Congress, since the black man owed a debt that he made up, that he still had the right to own them, and they approved it. That was the start of slavery in America through a black man, and white slaves were cheaper than black. So,
but it's still not legitimizing slavery. It's wrong. The point is, you know the history.
Yeah, I know the history, and it's simply...
I mean, most Roman slaves were not African. They were German.
Yeah, it's just business. It's no different than us having... you know, how good your 18-wheeler is compared to that, or just your farm equipment or your plow or your hose. It was just a business, and white slaves were cheaper. If you look back at the scholars back then, they were saying how white slaves couldn't even hold the dumbbells or the bales of hay or last out in the sun as much as blacks, so the blacks costed more. And it also fights the propaganda and narrative that there was a massive majority of blacks being enslaved. They couldn't even...
You ought to make a documentary, because I've thought about that. Not lessening black slavery was terrible.
Yeah.
Transatlantic was terrible. But if you go back, Germany didn't, Austro-Hungarian Empire until 1860 free the slaves. Same thing in Russia. They were white slaves. They owned them.
Yes.
Anybody can type in Russia frees the serfs, which means slave. The point is that this is going on everywhere.
Yes. It's completely business, and they've just made it seem like it was an American problem. We're the first to free cattle slavery. But it was
I'm not giving America a pass. I'm just saying if everybody else is doing it,
yeah.
How come we're only taught about America? Why is that happening?
It's only happening because if you can get people to hate their country, they would feel like there needs a solution. Now, if it needs a solution, you're going to get that solution from the same people that told you to hate it.
Wow.
Now, I never heard of this guy until today, but obviously he's famous because on Twitter he has over 1 million followers. But that means nothing over here at CRTV. Don't y'all just love the projection they try to do to get out of reparations for foundational black Americans? The first thing they do is go to ancient history, ancient world history, to the BC era. You know, the whole world has slaves. Let me tell y'all something on behalf of foundational black Americans. There is no group in America that knows history, world history, and ancient history better than foundational black Americans. All we do is study history. We know that, you idiots! Don't you just love how they tell us things that we already know already? You know, there were slaves in other countries. We know that! You know, there were white slaves in Europe. We know that! We the ones that be at the internet schooling y'all on world history. We know more about your history than you do. Stop telling us things we already know to try to get out your responsibility of paying reparations to foundational black Americans. This idiot Lucre, you know, the word slave come from Slavic. That was the Eastern Europe. We know that. That ain't got nothing to do with the United States. We know that where the word slave originates from. We know that. Why does everybody think foundational black Americans don't know nothing? Stop telling us things we know world history. That's all we do is study history. On our own, not from these lying-ass school books in the American school system. We teach ourselves history. Alex Jones projecting ass. You know, the Roman slaves were white. They were German. We know that. Alex Jones projecting ass went to 1000 BC to try to get our reparations for foundational black Americans. That ain't gonna work. Slavery in ancient Rome has nothing to do with the United States chattel slavery. Every time we bring up reparations for foundational black Americans, these idiots go all around the world. Back to 2,500 years. You know, there was slavery in ancient Egypt. We know that. What does that have to do with the United States? And then this idiot Dom Lucre, with his eyes just a bucking, sat there and lied and said Anthony Johnson was the first slave owner in the United States. First of all, sir, the first slaves were brought to the United States in the early 1600s by the British. So how was he the first slave owner? Oh, okay, I get it. You're using semantics. You're trying to say he was the first legal slave owner appointed by the courts, right? But there's one small problem. He wasn't. Y'all like going back in ancient history, Dom Lucre and Alex the Projector Jones? Yeah, let's go back in ancient history, shall we? 3 servants working for a farmer, a white man by the name of Hugh Gwynn, ran away to Maryland. 2 were white, 1 was black. They were captured in Maryland and returned to Jamestown, where the court sentenced all 3 to 30 lashes, a severe punishment even by the standards of 17th century Virginia. The 2 white men were sentenced to an additional 4 years of servitude, 1 more year for Gwynn, followed by 3 more for the colony. But in addition to the whipping, the black man, a man named John Punch, was ordered to serve his said master or his assigns for the time of his natural life, here or elsewhere. John Punch, a black man, no longer had hope for freedom. That trial and sentencing took place in 1640 AD in what will become known as the United States a little later on. Now let's go to the Anthony Johnson trial date, since y'all like ancient history. On March 8th, 1655, the Northampton County Court ruled in favor of Anthony Johnson, a free man of Negroid descent, when using that word African, when he was accused of keeping his indentured servant as a slave. Now, last time I checked my calculator, 1640 predates 1655. Can I get a mic drop? Mic drop! Now you know why they didn't allow niggas to read during slavery. Because we break out the receipts and forensics. Y'all know how we do at Channel Raw TV. We break out the receipts and forensics. They hate that niggas can read now. So Dom Lucre, who was the first legal slave owner in America? Hugh Gwynn, a white man, or Anthony Johnson, who came 15 years later with his court case? You wanted to play them semantics, talk about who's the first legal slave owner. when in all reality there were white slave owners in the United States, or what would become known as the United States, before both Hugh Gwynn and Anthony Johnson. It just didn't go through the courts, but they were slave owners. That's why the British dropped us off in the United States, the southeastern United States. Those were slaves. Those were not indentured servants. And misview that, they could have worked their time off and got free. Only a few, small percentage were able to work their freedom off. A small percentage. The majority of those blacks treated like farm animals. That's chattel slavery. It didn't need to go to no courts. Indentured servants did not get their names changed to their slave master names. Those were slaves. That's why all these black people walk around with European names. Slaves, not indentured servants. Those Irish indentured servants got to keep their families' last names. The black slaves didn't get to keep their names. They got their slave owners' European names slapped on them because they were property. You know how you name your dog or your cat? You give it a name? That's what they did to the blacks. They gave us a name like a damn animal. That did not happen to the Irish indentured slaves. All the Irish people still have their Irish last names, but us, we can walk around names like Johnson, McKenzie, Jones. Those are European. Slavery that happened 2,000 years ago or in other countries has nothing to do with chattel slavery in the United States of America. Nor does it negate the fact that the United States government owes foundational black Americans, the people who built America from the ground up and single-handedly made it an economic superpower, as well as giving it all its music and culture. Reparations. No group of people has their fingerprint on the United States of America like foundational black Americans. That's not my opinion. That is a fact. Debate me and I'll destroy you. Oh, and another thing, Dom Lucre, you saying the slave trade just being a business does not negate the fact that we are owed reparations. I totally agree. It was a business. And it's also a business that the United States federal government owes us that check. Run it.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Channel Raw TV Bay Bay.